Senate Committee Room, B 306. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia? Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia? Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia? Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia? Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306.
Welcome to the General Laws and Technology Council Committee. I'm going to ask the clerk to open the roll for a moment. And I know that the Commerce and Labor Committee is going to be meeting, so we may be at ease for a moment so some members can proxy in a few minutes. But if we have a quorum to get started.
Mr. Chair, you do have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay. First action is we need a motion. I think Senator Pillion moves that we take SB 1399, Senator Stanley's bill, by for the day.
So, yeah, I do. So, I'll be glad to make that motion.
Okay, and that's seconded by Senator Locke. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, 1399 is by for the day. We have a list of sponsors who are present. Senator Stanley has another bill. Is he in the room now? Okay. Senator Salim is here, though. Okay. Senator Salim, is this SB 1161?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Why don't you get started then?
Mr. Chair, I have before you Senate Bill SB 1161. This bill addresses a critical and growing concern in the modern digital landscape, the ethical and the responsible use of AI technologies. SB 1161 is critical to address the growing risk associated with AI-generated content, such as misinformation, manipulation, and erosion of public trust. As AI technologies become more advanced, they produce content that is nearly indistinguishable from human-created work, which can be misused to deceive, harm reputations, or spread propaganda. This bill ensures transparency by requiring clear disclosures for AI-generated content, holding developers and licensees accountable, and empowering consumers to make informed decisions. This bill holds developers and third-party licenses accountable for maintaining these disclosures and preventing misuse of AI system. There's another component of this bill which provides developers with a 30-day notice and an opportunity to cure any violations before enforcement action. As a result of that, this is a balancing consumer protection with fair compliance measures. Ultimately, the bill seeks to safeguard against misinformation, manipulation, and unethical AI practices while fostering responsible innovation by establishing essential guardrails that balances technological progress with transparency, accountability, and trust, while providing a pathway for developers to comply responsibly.
Are there any in the audience who have issues or opposition to the bill, SB 1161? Are there those who would like to speak in support of SB 1161? I did want to ask a question. There was a question whether the definition of making a clear and conspicuous disclosure of all AI-generated content as appropriate for the medium, if it was too subjective or undefined, and whether it was regardless to any risk to the, without regard to risk to the consumer, I don't know if you had any comment on that or if you're eager to move forward as is.
Counsel for the definition, but I do know the way this specific part, Mr. Chair, is written, it is a lot more clear than other bills similar to this that are written when it comes to the disclosure, when it comes to the definitions. If I think I understood the question.
Okay, and this does not have a delayed enactment date. It's, you're ready to move forward with this on July 1st, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Are there questions from members of the committee or discussion on SB 1161? I don't know, Senator Aird, you're on the AI subcommittee. Does this track at all with what Delegate Maldonado was doing, or is it totally separate?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. This was not a bill that came through the AI subcommittee or a bill that we looked at. Also, it is not the equivalent of the legislation regarding the developers and deployers. That's all I can offer as it pertains to this.
Okay. Well, I guess we have a few options. The bill could pass if that's the motion, or it could be PBI'd with a letter to JCOTS asking for its review. I don't know if there are motions.
So moved.
Okay. To PBI with a letter to JCOTS. Okay. Any discussion? Okay. Any final comment?
Chair, I will just briefly a final comment, and then we'll let the committee vote on it as well. I will say this bill, when we're talking about generated content, I think you all may have seen not only elections, but you have seen misinformed information, photography that was produced with malicious intent, where the consumer was not aware. This does end up becoming a consumer protection bill, along with making sure that we protect folks in the Commonwealth.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just,
Senator,
I really don't want to delay this, but just one of the things that I think to keep in mind as it's being looked at, as I read the bill, the definition of what the content is includes any image that's generated, and that would include things like a logo that is generated through artificial intelligence. And there are a lot of static images that really pose it doesn't matter how it's generated, but it would be a violation of the code of this as it's written if you didn't disclose that. And I think that's just one element of this. I think we've got to be really careful that we don't make it too broad while we're protecting people, so.
And Mr. Chair, speaking to the bill.
Senator Aird.
No, I just want to go on record to share with the senator that certainly no harm is intended to the bill whatsoever. I just really can't speak intelligently to reaction from stakeholders and the review that we have tried to do with the others. And so I hope it's not received as ill-intended. We want to just make sure we are reconciling it with the changes that will possibly occur this year, and that JCOTS has the opportunity to assess it, to be supportive as possible.
Chair, and to
Senator Salim.
Senator Aird as well, no offense taken. I hope that we can work on this together. This is something that is new for the Commonwealth, and I would like to get it right.
I thank you for your efforts and appreciate the bill. I'm going to support the motion to PBI with the reference to JCOTS so we can get it right. And with that, unless there's further discussion, the committee will vote.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The SB 1417, My Digital Content Authenticity and Transparency Act, I was going to ask that we take a similar action to PBI it with a letter to JCOTS. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Unless there's anyone who has a burning desire to comment, we will proceed to vote.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Thank you. Okay, next in the queue, we have Senator Stanley. which we've got 1246, the Emergency Management Preparedness and Capabilities Grant Program and Fund, which has a fiscal impact, so it would need to be referred to Finance if it's successful.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the time, and members of the committee. Senate Bill 1246 is before you. Just to give you a brief summary of what it does, it establishes the Virginia Emergency Management Preparedness and Capabilities Grant Program and Fund that will provide financial assistance to local political subdivisions where we need improvement in emergency management capabilities. Would be administered by the Department of Emergency Management with specific guidelines for application, use, and accountability. Ladies and gentlemen, I represent part of the district that was hurt by Hurricane Helene. Went out there, and what I found out was that a lot of our emergency management system and the head of emergency management for our counties and cities and towns, especially in rural areas, there is no real full-time person. Sometimes they go, you will be the emergency manager. And in fact, our emergency manager had been contracted out to Florida. So he in one of the counties, he was not even there because he was doing work in another state. So the grant purpose supports hiring full-time emergency management professionals, which would enhance the emergency operations plans. It would help them purchase essential equipment and maintain emergency preparedness. This is not just for Southside or Southwest Virginia. This would be for the entire Commonwealth of Virginia. However, you must have 50% matching funds from the locality if a grant is given. So it's not fully upon the state to fund the program, but the locality must be ready to fund at least 50%. And then every year, we would get a report on the grant activities. There would be a work group that would be formed that would review national best practices and provide recommendations for long-term program funding. What we're trying to do is enhance local preparedness, encourage local investment, strengthen our emergency workforce we saw, which severely needs strengthening after Hurricane Helene. That was evident to us all down in my region. It would also address funding gaps that we have between state and local dollars, to increase the sufficiency of funds for emergency preparedness, that is, to prepare before the emergency occurs. It promotes accountability within the departments. It has a strict monitoring system, annual reporting requirements that ensure transparency, and it also at the same time studies long-term sustainabilities. That work group provides a forward-looking and thinking approach to funding, identifying what's working, what's not working, and to make sure that this program would be viable in the future. There is a request of, I believe, I put in for $5 million to fund this. But again, this would be for Fairfax to Franklin, from east to west, north to south in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And that's the bill, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Senator Stanley. And I know this is supported by the Virginia Emergency Management Association. Is there someone from that association or others who would like to speak in support briefly or here today? I received a letter from them or a handout. Okay. Are there questions for Senator Stanley?
The report and refer to Finance.
Okay, the motion has been seconded. All in favor of, unless there's discussion or anyone opposed who wants to speak, we'll proceed to vote on the voting board.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the time of the members of the committee today.
Sure thing. Got on my list Senator Surville, Senator Hackworth, and then Senator Lucas, and then Senator Mulcahy. Why don't we start with, unless Surville's in the room, we go to Senator Hackworth.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I will be very brief. This is, first I need to move the substitute.
Okay. All in favor of adopting the substitute will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the substitute's before us and it's being distributed.
Okay, this is was brought to me by the Virginia Realtors, and we've heard the anecdotal stories about deed fraud happening across the country. The most widely known is the incident of the sale of Graceland. The substitute, before you realize that we need more data and information, this establishes a technical advisory group to evaluate the prevalence of deed fraud, develop recommendations for the prevention of deed fraud, develop measures to enhance protections for property owners, and the advisory group will look at all steps in a real estate transaction to identify vulnerabilities or deficiencies and recommend policy changes to address them. And that is the substitute, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I received a copy of a letter from a Fairfax County Federation of Citizens Associations asking you to make an amendment. I was just curious if that was incorporated in your substitute. It asks electronic voting on amendments to governing documents. I don't know if that was unrelated or if that's something that you incorporated.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Eric.
not to undercut the patron, but it looks like this has been moved to Section 1 advisory group, so
Oh, I'm
a study
sorry.
basically in the substitute. So I think that we are now looking at a very, not the legislation as introduced for those types of amendments, but something perhaps that this advisory group could take a look at.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. And Sarah Hackworth, what is deed fraud? I thought it said deep fraud. I was getting confused with deep fakes.
Fraud, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Do the realtors want to comment? This is just a technical advisor group in VHDA now. I assume you're in support?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Erin Corman with the Realtors. Just want to thank the patron for bringing this bill. It's a very important issue. We're looking forward to working on it in the remainder of the year. Happy to answer any questions.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second to report. Unless anyone's opposed who wants to speak, we will proceed to vote on the voting board. Oh, the motion is to what? Well, did they request it? So if they didn't request it, it has a fiscal impact? Yes, so we will refer it to, report and refer to finance.
It's fine.
Okay, that's the motion, so we'll vote on that.
Open the board, sir. Ayes 15, no zero.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
Oh, did they start? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Senator McPike while I go next door for a moment, but next up is Senator Suravel with Board of Contractors Bill, SB 1008.
1008? No, okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Senate Bill 1008 is a bill that we actually discussed at the Water Commission almost a year ago, but we actually never took it up as an actual recommendation, although we probably should have. But basically, the problem is that I represent probably a couple thousand houses on the Potomac River, and who knows how many thousands more the Border Resource Protection Areas under the Chesapeake Bay Act. And repeatedly over the last decade I've served them, there have been situations where contractors are advising people that they can do certain improvements on their homes, around their homes, without telling them they need to go get approval from either the County Wetlands Board or that it's in an RPA, and so they end up getting violated for violating the Chesapeake Bay Act. Just to give you one example, I had one constituent who, they had a riverfront property, and they had a bulkhead, which is like, a bunch of boards nailed to a couple piers to keep the waves from eroding your land, and they needed to replace their bulkhead, and it was grandfathered, but they never went and got approval for the replacement. When they had a stop work order that was entered, and then because of the stop work order, the land eroded. And because of that, they then had to build a living shoreline, all because the contractor gave them bad advice at the beginning. And I just want to make sure these contractors understand the rules of the Chesapeake Bay Act, living shorelines, before they start misleading consumers about it. So that's what the bill does. It just says that in addition to all the other stuff that they have to teach people, they also have to demonstrate they have knowledge in where an RPA is and the rules about living shorelines, so that we don't have consumers continue to be misled about this stuff, causing unnecessary violations.
Questions of the patron? Those present in support of Senate Bill 1008, please come forward.
I don't think there is anybody. I could have constituents here to complain, but I didn't.
Any opposition to Senate Bill 1008? This is not requested by Finance. You got to pass on this one. There's a motion and a second to report. Clerk, open the roll.
Chair forgot the proxy.
Yeah.
13-0.
Next up, we have Senator Lucas. You have Senate Bill 1128, and that has not been requested by yourself, so.
That is correct, and thank you for saying that. Okay, Mr. Chairman and members of committee, Senate Bill 1128, the bill aligns with Governor Youngkin's Executive Order number 36 of 2024, which establishes the stand tall, stay strong, succeed. Sir? Oh, I am sorry.
Is there a motion on the substitute? Is a motion a second to adopt the substitute? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The substitute is properly before us. Senator Lucas.
Yes, and again, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, it provides another tool in the toolbox to aid the process of providing one of the critical criteria outlined in Executive Order number 36, the provision of stable housing to the affected population of our citizenry. It aligns with the Commonwealth of Virginia with the Department of Housing and Urban Development directive to its housing providers, stemming the practice of blanket application denial solely based on the results of a criminal history background check. The guidelines to be developed by the stakeholders work group will follow the same as those that HUD has requested of its provider, basically to consider each case on the individual basis taken into account. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, this bill was requested by the city of Portsmouth, and so with that, I'd like to have the legislative liaison come up and speak further to it. This was at the request of the city council.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you, Senator Lucas.
Take all of that.
I should take it all. Good afternoon. I'm Sherry Neal, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Sherry Neal, the Intergovernmental Affairs Manager for the city. Yes, we did ask Senator Lucas to carry this for us. You may remember it from last year. We had a similar bill in last year. With this particular changes from the last one is that last year the bill request did not allow for a background check. This time that's been taken out, it does allow for background checks. However, we're just basically saying you can't have a blanket denial just based on the criminal history. And as Senator Lucas was saying, because of the governor passing that executive order 36 last year on the Stand Tall, Stay Strong, Succeed Together reentry initiative, which was effective in August of last year to help reduce recidivism and homelessness, we feel that this is another tool in the toolbox to assist with that effort. So it's a good bipartisan bill, and we hope that you guys will look upon it favorably.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Senator.
I don't think anyone's going to be here to oppose. Can I move to report it?
Okay, unless there's anyone in the room who feels compelled to speak against this bill, we will proceed to vote on the motion to report.
Thank you. She's been waiting for like, thank you.
Okay, we can open the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Thank you, everyone. Thank
Ayes
you.
15-0.
Senator Mulcahy, I believe you have SB 984, Virginia Fire Personnel and Equipment Grant Program, and that you have an amendment?
Yes, I have a line item amendment.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion to, to adopt the amendment, which has been seconded. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, and does the clerk want to either report or distribute the amendment?
27, introduced after than, strike 20, insert 50.
So no less than 50% of the funds allocated to the program shall be used each year to provide grants with majority volunteer or volunteer personnel. Okay. Sir Mulcahy, can I ask, do we know how many, is there a reason, like, do we know, or if, I have no clue as to whether how many departments in Virginia are volunteer versus not volunteer?
I do not. I know in my district, which has 8 localities, that's 45 fire departments, that only 3 of them have paid firefighters, and I think there's still, even in those 3, they're not all paid. I mean, that's just maybe one paid firefighter.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Okay, please tell us more about your bill.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 984 would establish the Virginia Fire Personnel and Equipment Grant Program for the purpose of providing grants to localities to hire additional firefighters and to improve their firefighting and emergency medical services. The bill specifies that the Department of Fire Program shall administer the program, and two types of grants shall be made from the program. The first shall provide grants to localities to increase the number of firefighters. Such grants shall be made for up to 3 years and shall be used by localities for programs to hire new additional full-time firefighters, convert part-time or volunteer firefighters to full-time firefighters, or recruit and retain volunteer firefighters. The second shall provide grants to localities for improving firefighting and emergency medical services, including acquiring firefighting and emergency medical services vehicles and equipment, and modifying facilities. For both grants, the bill provides that funds shall not be used to supplement any funds currently provided by the Commonwealth or by the locality, and should be used to increase the total amount of funds available for the provisions of firefighting or emergency medical services. Currently, there's money in the budget in the Commonwealth for equipment and medical resources for firefighters and EMS around the Commonwealth, but it's just not enough. These firefighters and EMS put their lives on the line for us every day. I mean, we salute them, we appreciate them, but we've got to start taking better care of them. In 2020, the National Fire Protection Association found that 50% of all our firefighters are between the age of 30 and 49. However, volunteer fire departments, the highest percentage of those are over the age of 50. In many rural areas, like where I represent, most volunteers are in their 60s and 70s, and we're just having a really hard time getting volunteers in the younger age groups to volunteer. And so what really prompted me to do this is during the Hurricane Helene, we had a tornado touchdown in Pittsylvania County, and I was there for 2 days, and just, they were working, and then, in the evening they come in and huddle in the firehouse in Dry Fork. And I mean, the stories of the devastation and what the volunteers had to do, and this was an all-volunteer department. And they not only, leave their families behind to do this work day and night, but, they have to go out and on the weekends or the evenings and, have bake sales and stews and all the things they have to do to raise money so they can buy equipment, or they can, fix the firehouse, or, they have to work on the firehouse, they have to work on the equipment. They have to do it all. They can't just, you sign up to be a firefighter thinking you're going to go out and do these great things, and then you also have to bake the cookies and, stay up all night cooking the stew. You all know what I'm talking about. And then, like I said, most of the gentlemen there that were doing this work were literally grandparents, 60-year-old men and women. And so, we just all know what they're going through. And so a lot of I found when I was doing the research to introduce this bill that there was actually a report that came out. Where did it go? Oh, geez, this is my luck. So there was a report that came out actually this year from the Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security that says that localities among the 10 lowest funded in the state in relation to their population, land and area, and the EMS call volume concentrated in Southside and Southwest Virginia are largely rural, generally experience population declines, and universally report a decrease in volunteerism. And so that's, part of the area that I represent. Like I said, we almost have all volunteers. that,
Yes, Senator Williams Graves.
Mr. Chair, perhaps the senator might want to take a pause to see if she has any opposition.
okay, I will pause.
Well, let's see if you have any questions, before we take testimony. I did have one question, and I don't know if there's an expert who would know this, or if we should wait till it goes to finance, if that's what happens. I didn't know. I believe 599 funds are for law enforcement. I didn't know if this dovetails with that, or if this has anything to do with it, or if it's complementary. I don't know if there's anyone in the room, fire experts, who can enlighten us. Okay, we'll save that for upstairs then, otherwise.
I think this is a standalone. I'm not positive of that, but I think
Okay.
it would be a brand-new grant program.
Yeah, that's how I read it. I just didn't know if they were going to the same people who might be eligible for those funds, if it mattered how it works.
Mr. Chair, according to
Senator
the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services, it looks like 599 funds are designated specifically to support local police departments to cover costs related to law enforcement operations, such as officer training, equipment purchases, and personnel expenses.
So not for fire departments at all?
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, so with that explanation, is there anyone who's compelled to share their opinion on this bill? Any motion or discussion from members of the panel?
Mr. Chairman, this is Chris Daly. I'm with the Virginia Fire Chiefs Association.
Okay, if you could make sure you're on camera and we can hear you. Oh, okay.
Yes,
I see you, sir.
I'm on camera. My name's Chris Daly. I'm with the Virginia Fire Chiefs Association. I have the pleasure to serve as their executive director. I retired 11 years ago after serving 33 years on multiple departments in the Commonwealth of Virginia. My last assignment was in Spotsylvania County as a fire chief there for 25 years. The Virginia Fire Chiefs is an organization that's a statewide group that represents a little over 1,100 members that includes volunteers, career and combination members. And the report, the VCU report that was referred to earlier, House Bill 2175 was adopted 2 years ago during the General Assembly session, and there was supposed to have been funds set aside to be able to have an outside agency conduct that assessment. Because of the discussions going back and forth in the late hour of the budget being adopted, when the budget was finally approved, those funds were not included. So in-house staff from fire programs and the Office of EMS conducted that study. This past year, VCU was engaged to validate and review and validate the findings, of which they did. We had about 25 fire chiefs from all across Virginia down at the legislature on Wednesday and Thursday this week. And sustainable funding for fire and EMS is certainly a high priority. It's our #1 priority for the Virginia Fire Chiefs Association. As the senator mentioned earlier, 599 funding is strictly for law enforcement, as well as comp board funding goes straight for sheriff's departments. There are no direct state tax dollars going to support localities in the provision of fire and EMS. The VFCA supports this bill, and as Senator Lucas mentioned earlier, this would be another tool in our toolbox that would help us get closer to where we need to be.
Thank you for your testimony and support. Okay, and then I detected a motion.
Move to report and refer to finance.
Okay, moved and seconded to report and refer to finance. Let's proceed to vote.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Thank you. The bill reports. Okay.
Chairman.
Thank you. Let's see. So then we've got Senator Morrison, Senator Aird, though. Senator Aird has an important bill that came from the Joint Commission on Technology and Science.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Yes, Senate Bill 1214 does have a amendment that I'd like to first get in front of members, a line amendment to be reported.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to adopt the line amendment.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and I'll explain the bill.
We have to vote on it first.
Sorry.
All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay.
You can tell I'm just ready to.
And does the clerk want to either distribute or tell us what the line amendment does, or what it says?
It adds an enactment clause that the provisions of this act shall not become.
Oh,
Is that the line amendment you wanted?
1 second, please.
Okay, let's just be at ease for a moment.
So I move to withdraw that amendment, and instead I ask that the substitute be distributed.
Okay, so I guess we have to reconsider the vote by which we adopted the amendment. All in favor of doing that, is that a recorded vote to reconsider that, or just, okay. All in favor of reconsidering that will say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so now Senator Aird moves and Senator Williams-Graves seconds that the substitute be adopted.
And Mr. Chair, this substitute is an amendment to the facial recognition definition.
Okay, we need to.
Move the substitute.
Okay, so substitute's been moved and seconded. All in favor of adopting it will say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the substitute's before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. The substitute includes an amendment to the facial recognition definition. But as you stated, Mr. Chair, this legislation comes after a lot of input and hard work over the last several months through the Joint Commission on Technology and Science to basically adopt a framework for how our public bodies are engaging with high-risk AI systems. Mr. Chair, there are there's a lot of new code in this legislation, and I will mention just some of it, and would be happy to then take questions that remain. So, Mr. Chair, in this legislation, as I said, this is specifically structured for high-risk AI systems, making consequential decisions through our public bodies. And I need to specify that while public bodies typically has a much broader reference, and this bill specifically, we remove any reference to local governments, city, counties, boards of supervisors, school boards, and planning commissions and governing boards. And you'll see at the end of this legislation that we hope to come back and properly address them. So it includes language about a work group. But furthermore, Mr. Chair, this legislation also increases the responsibility significantly of the CIO with establishing policies and procedures governing AI use. Further, we also add a number of new definitions and as well as things that this would not apply to. Sometimes there can be a lot of confusion between AI, generative AI, high-risk AI, and what are AI systems. So we try and make it as clear as possible through our definitions portion. This bill also largely is a transparency and disclosure bill. It will promote significant transparency by requiring certain documents, disclosures, and we also require impact assessments, both for deployers and developers of these high-risk AI systems. We add significant consumer rights in this legislation, introducing provisions to protect consumers from the negative consequences of high-risk AI systems. We add compliance standards, and again, as I mentioned previously, oversight significantly through the CIO. Mr. Chair, you will see that this legislation has a delayed enactment of 2026. We're hoping that this will allow our state entities to get further prepared for what this legislation would require. And I think a note that I will close with is simply saying that we also had another bill that was reported out of JCOTS that focuses specifically on private developers and deployers of these high-risk AI systems. And so I just this morning received some additional feedback of changes that have been made to that legislation regarding certain definitions, and it is my intent to try and reconcile those in preparation for Senate Finance. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yes, Senator Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for the patron.
I'm ready.
First, I want to say what a incredible bill, and it sounds wonderful, and it should probably find a nice place in Senate Finance. There's no opposition to the bill that you've heard of, right?
No, that's not accurate. This morning at 8:30, I did hear that the administration is opposed to the bill.
Oh, move.
administration.
I'd like to make a motion. Move to report and refer to finance.
Okay, there's a motion to report and refer to finance. Now, just note with the delayed effective date that we have, if this is to pass, that the bill could be perhaps improved upon if that's necessitated, and that you've committed that your definitions are going to align if Delegate Maldonado's bill on the other side is successful. Yeah, are there members of the public? Is there anyone who has concerns or is opposed to this bill who'd like to speak?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Dan Wolf. I'm with the Alliance for Digital Innovation. We're a nonpartisan coalition of technology companies seeking to modernize government through the adoption of commercial technology. We don't officially take a position on Senator Aird's bill. We've been working with the senator at JCOT this whole time. The only reason I'm getting up to comment is to reinforce to the committee the need for the uniform definitions across the board so that there's not a moving target between the public sector and the private sector in the Commonwealth. So thank you very much.
Duly noted. Are there those online waiting to speak? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I think we had a motion.
Anyone who wanted to speak in favor in the room? Okay, good. Okay. Please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Carmen Bingham with the Virginia Poverty Law Center. Just want to thank the senator for bringing this bill. We do support this measure, and we appreciate being able to continue to work with the senator and the folks on the business side of this to make sure that we are protecting the citizens of the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second to report, and was it to refer to finance? Please indicate your preference on the voting board. Congratulations, Senator. It's been probably a long year, but we appreciate your work on that one. Okay, and I see Senator Marsden. Do we have Senate Bill 1330 regarding short-term rentals?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. It does deal with short-term rentals registry and civil penalties. It was brought to my attention. I'm sorry. We have a amendment. I'm sorry. I wasn't aware. All right.
Is there an amendment that's been prepared for this bill?
Oh, excuse me. It was recommended by the Department of Tax. I'm sorry. It involves a short-term rentals registration civil penalty. It supports legislation that directs the Department of Taxation to establish a registry of short-term rental properties and require accommodations providers and intermediaries to register. Under the bill, an accommodations provider shall provide to the department its name and the address of each property it offers for short-term rental. Directs all accommodations intermediaries to register with the Virginia Department of Tax Administration. Third-party registry to maintain privacy of taxpayer information is contained in the bill and restricts sharing of information with the other agencies, in other words, zoning officials, things like that, and it centralizes information. I do have someone here, I believe, who can speak to some of the issues this is attempting to solve.
Okay, and I'll ask you or your witness, is the goal of the bill that all short-term rentals would be registered with the state in a way that would give some privacy and that would be shared with local commissioners of the revenue, and if they weren't paying their taxes, they could shut them down? Is that what the goal is to after?
It tightens things up.
What about people who don't have a short-term rental ordinance in their locality? Would they be, is this go after them too, or?
That, I do not know the answer to that question. If I could.
Okay, well, why don't you come forward if you would like to speak on this bill?
Experts here, come forward.
So between Katie from, and we can answer the questions. Ross Smuggler with Virginia Commission of Revenue Association, and yes, it would apply to them.
Okay, so it would give localities the ability to shut down or fine.
It would just, they would have to register with the state and then whatever their local ordinance provides.
And if they weren't paying their taxes or they weren't registered, they could be taken, what would be the penalty?
Then they could take action.
Okay.
And that would be the same as they would for any type of excise tax.
Did we consider the same bill last year, Senator Marsden, or was it similar? Did we consider a similar bill or the same bill last year?
I was not associated with.
Oh, not from you. Okay.
Delegate Ware put it in last year.
Oh, that was the other body. Okay. Are there others who would like to speak for or against? Or question from Senator Williams Graves.
Thank you. Good to see you, Commissioner Mugler. Question is, to the chair's point, if a locality does not have a short-term rental ordinance, what's supposed to happen then? Because they don't even know who's renting their properties out for short-term rental.
Well, this would just be available information for them for the use of taxation purposes, even if they don't have an ordinance.
Mr. Chair, follow up?
Yes, Senator.
As well, like the city of Fairfax.
You're absolutely right. So I guess my question is trying to understand who's responsible for putting themselves and or their Airbnb on the registry. Is it the property owner, or is it the platform in which the property is being advertised as a short-term rental, or both?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, I believe that what would happen is an individual provider would register with the Department of Taxation with their name and address. They would get a unique identifier that they would then give to the intermediary, which would be listed on the listing on whatever intermediary site. Excuse me. Mr. Chairman, does that answer your question, Senator?
Mr. Chair, it does. It just seems to me that it can, if there is an ordinance and a registry required with a locality, and now we're adding a third registration requirement, it seems that it could put more requirements on the owner of the property. It just can create more.
Let me follow on your question and just ask, would it be the platform that is the one that's providing to the department the list of all the individual properties?
So, by my understanding, Mr. Chairman, the platform would remit other metadata to the state. The provider would have already given an address and a name to associate intermediary with provider. That's my understanding of the bill.
But if I could follow up, the person who's giving the addresses does not necessarily have to be the individual Airbnb host. They would give their information with their unique number or get the number and give it to Airbnb or whatever or Verbo or whatever it is. Is that right?
Mr. Chairman, what would happen is the individual provider would one time have to register their name and address with the department and get that unique identifier. In a continuing sense, the platform would have to remit other metadata related to those unique identifiers in perpetuity.
Okay. So I'm going to turn it back over to Senator Williams Graves, and then we've got Senator Head and Senator Jordan. I think Senator Jordan's next. But how many times, I guess Senator Williams Graves was asking, and I'll let you follow up, how many different places do they have to register their property? They would have to register with the state and with their locality.
If, Mr. Chairman, if the locality has a rental registry ordinance, and I do not know how many localities have those, it is resource intensive, it is possible that they would be required to register twice.
Okay, so once with the locality and once with the Commonwealth.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Senator Williams-Graves, you had the floor, and then I'm going to turn it back over there.
Okay, thank you. And so two follow-ups. One is on the reporting side. So it is my understanding that through the Commissioner of Revenue, those gross receipts are self-reporting. So are we trying to have a gotcha moment for our residents on the revenue?
What's happened in the past is we get this big check for example, Hampton, $800,000 a month from, say, Airbnb, and we don't know where to apply it because we don't know who that. We get a check, but we can't account for it, and so sometimes we have to guess. But we have a local registry in Hampton now and some pretty tight ordinances, and we have a model ordinance. So we're working out a lot of those problems. But before, we just didn't know where to apply the money because some of them were on file and some of them weren't. Some of them still were getting paid for that are not legal. So pretty complicated.
To my second follow-up question to your question, Mr. Chair, is in that instance, like you mentioned Fairfax, who has a ban, and if
Just the city of Fairfax.
City of Fairfax that has a ban, and you in that case, if a check arrives in the Commissioner of Revenue's office in the City of Fairfax and they have a ban, is this now an opportunity that would be used by the locality to go after the citizen?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm sure.
Maybe we can defer to council.
I don't think they would accept it.
Well, I thought they have to register with the state, so they're supposed to.
Well, this bill, they have to register with the state. Right now, they don't have to register with the state.
Okay. Let me.
I'll turn it around the axle.
Yes. Mr.
Bring some clarity to this, please.
Why don't you address that, and then we'll take Senator Jordan's question.
Ron Jordan, representing Airbnb. Let me try to bring some clarity to this, what the bill does. The bill does three things. It requires the State Department of Taxation to set up a registry and for every host to submit his information to the Department of Taxation, and they'll get a unique identifier. That information is then to be used by the accommodations provider, intermediary like the Airbnb and Vrbo, when they report their tax collections to the local commissioners of revenue and the local tax officials. However, if a platform like Vrbo or Airbnb already reports that information, the address information that y'all been discussing here, and the gross receipts to the locality, they're exempt from all this. The people who do that are exempt from all this. Senator Surville had a bill 1402 yesterday in Senate Finance that was reported out unanimously that addresses the friction that had been occurring on providing those addresses. A similar bill has already come on the floor, is headed to the floor in the House on a almost identical vote. When that happens, you'll have the tax department that will have spent almost $800,000 to create this registry, and under the bill, no one will be required to submit information. And it's going to take, and they can't get to it until 2027. Senator Surville's bill goes into effect in July and had no fiscal impact. And it was also supported by the commissioners. That's kind of the long and short.
Is this bill still?
It's not needed.
Okay, I believe that Senator Jordan had the floor next.
Question for the patron. Senator Marsden, my fear always is like when we do things like registries, we have to be very careful with people's information. If we're going through the Department of Taxation, also conversely communicating with commissioners of revenue, would you not be worried that any person could FOIA an entire list of addresses of homes that would be partially empty many times of the year?
Are people's tax information FOIA?
The registry with the pass-through of information to a local commissioner of revenue's office, I believe that information would be FOIable at either location to the list of those addresses. My fear is that we're opening people up unduly to be a target. Can council maybe answer that if the patron's not sure?
I'm just not, sure on that, on that aspect. I mean, it is a list. Hold on.
I believe the registry information is public information. However, Senator Surable's bill wrapped the existing tax secrecy provisions that apply to income tax and everything else to the information accompanying the transient occupancy tax return.
Follow-up question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Senator Jordan.
I don't think that answered my full question. Anything that's on a registry that's passed from the Department of Taxation down to Commissioner of Revenue, unless there is something else I'm missing, is all FOIable. Is that correct?
I was talking about, sorry, Mr. Chairman, Senator Jordan. I was referring to I was thinking about the local registry. I don't know the specific answer to the tax question, but everything else in tax is pretty much confidential. So I would imagine this would be too. But we need somebody from tax to be more.
I think that that's enough of a concern if we don't know the answer, Mr. Chair.
Well, let me ask Legislative Services, could we not amend this to exempt disclosure of this from FOIA, except so make it available only to Commissioners of Revenue or the appropriate personnel?
Mr. Chair, Senator Jordan, so if we actually look at C1 and then A, B, C, D, there's a list of the information that does actually have to be provided. And then down in subsection D, beginning on lines 51, it talks about the department having to provide Commissioner of the Revenue with access to the registry, and it has to have got all the information except for this information in subdivision C1D, which is all of the information essentially about tax.
Mr. Chair, to follow up again on Senator Jordan's question, there wouldn't be any information in the registry under the bill because you've got the exemption for the providers that provide the information to the locality. And based on Senator Surville's bill, everyone will be doing that.
But we're going to move on. We've got a few more people in the queue for questions. Senator Hedman, Senator Aird is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to clarify, that's where I was getting to. I have short-term rental properties in other states, and I know every platform that I know of already collects all this information, submits it all to the localities, collects all the tax, and makes sure that it's done, and it's all automatically done as a part of the booking, because that was a wrinkle years ago that had to get ironed out, and necessarily so, to make sure that the localities were getting what they were supposed to when it was short-term rental. And particularly in light of Senator Surville's bill, assuming that it's going to go forward, and since it does look that it's going to, this becomes just superfluous and completely unneeded. Is that?
That is my client's position, yes, sir.
Okay, because
I'm sorry, remind us again where you're from? Airbnb. Okay. And Mr. Mugler, did you want to comment?
The only difference is with the Sorvell bill, it can't share the information with the locality, with codes and compliance and other offices within the city. It keeps it all secret within the Commissioner of Revenue's office. Okay, so that's the difference.
Okay. Did anyone want to have a closing word? Any of you folks?
I mean, I have a question,
Aaron?
Mr. Chair.
Okay, we're going to take Senator Aird's question, and then we'll let Aaron speak.
I know that this has sort of already been alluded to several times, but maybe because it's late, I'm a little slow. So were there changes made to the Surville bill? Because I guess my reading of it initially made me feel like there was some conflict with this version of this bill. So is that not the fact?
No, Senator, Mr. Chairman. No, Senator, I don't believe there was any conflict between them. The Surville bill resolved a friction between Airbnb, frankly, and the commissioners over providing the specific address information and the gross receipts for the specific addresses. That's what the Surville bill resolved, so there's no conflict with this that we saw. This just adds on to it.
Okay. Is anyone here from the State Department of Taxation? Okay, Senator Marston, I believe they were asking for a delayed enactment date, and based on the platform that's being built, would this be? They suggested 2027. I don't know if Mr. Mugler or others had thoughts on that.
I'm not sure why I think they need time to implement. Right. Yeah, they would need time to develop a system, or they may be hedging their bets, thinking the Sorville bill will take care of have peace in the valley with that. So that's what I'm maybe assuming.
Do you have a
development or peace in the valley?
yeah? Do you have a position on whether or not you want it to remain July 1st, 2026, or 2027 is acceptable? Or
The 27 is acceptable.
okay, in that case, I would entertain a motion to adopt the line amendment to strike 2026 in the effective date and replace it with 2027. Okay, so that's moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so now we've got the bill before us. Is there a motion on the actual bill 1330?
Mr. Chairman, if we could have one more comment.
Oh, please. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut off testimony.
It's been a good conversation. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'm Katie Boyle with the Virginia Association of Counties. Just wanted to thank Senator Marsden for working on this. I think, as has been alluded to, the issue that has been hanging out there is this issue of being able to attribute collections to individual properties. As Senator had mentioned, this has been resolved for several companies, but it had not been resolved for Airbnb until I think there's been a change of policy within Airbnb leadership, and they have committed now to be following the existing law. I think this is a helpful enforcement mechanism. This bill makes it very clear that you can share the information between the tax collector locally and zoning, which some of our members feel would be helpful in terms of ensuring that these are not being operated illegally. So just wanted to make that point. Thank the committee for the consideration. Thank the senator for working on this issue, and hopefully we can get to a point where the collections can be auditable and attributable to the right properties. And so thank you very much.
Thank you. The Realtors would like to comment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Erin Corman with the Realtors. We actually oppose this bill for a different reason. If you look down in paragraphs E and F, there's local zoning ordinance enforcement wrapped into this bill. So the intermediary has to report, or I guess report back to the locality as to whether the short-term rental is lawfully registered and following all the permitting locality rules. And if not, then the locality can then use that information to go after the providers. Specifically, it says if they're not otherwise authorized to be offered as a short-term rental pursuant to 15.2-983, that's the local registry. And the local registry has a whole list of people that are exempt from registering. So basically what you have is a local official looking at the registry and seeing that a short-term rental is not on it. They either have to start calling the owner to find out if they're exempt and why, or they can completely skip that step and just pull it from the listing on the intermediary. And there's no due process for the owner to fight that or prove that they were otherwise exempt from the local registry. So for those reasons, we do oppose the bill.
Thank you. Okay, is there further discussion or a motion? I'd say that
Mr. Chair, with all due respect to my friend Senator Marsden, I understand where this is trying to go, but I don't really think we need it, nor do I think this is ready. I would move to PBI.
Second.
okay. There's a motion and a second to PBI. We'll vote on that motion.
Ayes 11, noes 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Marsden. Everyone for their patience and persistence, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
The Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia.